Hello everybody, welcome back to Sports Card Connections. Today we're going to talk about 1970, the year that American football changed forever. And what happened that year? Well, the two leagues merged into one, the NFL as it is today. For maybe younger collectors, younger viewers not aware, there used to be two leagues from 1960 to 1969. You had the American Football League and the National Football League. In 1970 they merged. They had agreed to the merger a couple years before. And you had the 10 teams from the AFL merging with the 16 teams from the NFL. This created an unbalance if they were going to merge into one unit. So 3 teams took a large fee. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Orioles, and Cleveland Browns merged into the newly formed American Conference. So the league would be now divided into American and National Conference. Each would have a 5-team Eastern Division, 4-team Central Division, 4-team Western Division. The 3 division winners plus one team, the second place team with the best record, would meet in the wild card. Would be the wild card, meet in the playoffs. The conference champion after the 2 playoff games would then go to the Super Bowl versus the other conference champion. So this had been worked out a couple years before. How did this affect cards? Well, Topps had gotten the contract exclusively in 1968. After, from 64 to 67, Philadelphia Gum did the NFL, Topps did the AFL, and then Topps got the single contract in 68. So here we go for 1969. How is this going to be handled? Topps would issue a regular set, 2 insert sets, and they also provided the photos to Kellogg's to do a 3D set, all Topps photos, that would be released in cereal boxes. And what you would have, since Topps provided the photos, you did have a lot of repeated photos. We'll get to that in a moment. One key thing Topps did not do is they did not pay the NFL's new licensing fee. They didn't want to pay that. They only reached an agreement with the Players Association, and now much stronger. The 2 leagues merged into one Players Association. The NFL obviously upped their licensing fee, so Topps said no. So from 1970 to 1981, there are no logos on NFL football cards produced by Topps, which is fine if you don't show helmets. But of course, starting in 1971 and then throughout the rest of the time through 1981, they showed game action pictures and painted over the helmets, thus creating some ridiculous-looking cards, which are a great disappointment. They also repeated a lot of photos, so let's take a look at one here. Just grab somebody. Hall of Famer Fred Biletnikoff of the Raiders. Now this is his Topps card. And by the way, it's his same photo repeated from 1969. Here's the glossy insert. And here's from the Kellogg set. This was a common problem with Topps at that time, but there you go. Only the Kellogg set mentioned the Players Association. There's the logo there. Nowhere is it mentioned on any cards, NFL or anything, because they don't have the license for it. Topps, just say TCG, Topps Chewing Gum, printed USA. So let's start with the Kellogg set. There's the set. Show you a few examples. There were 4 cards in the Kellogg set that were not in the Topps set. And that would be Travis Williams of the Packers, Al Denson of the Broncos. That picture is probably minimum 5 years old, if not older. Old Broncos uniform. Dick Shiner of the Steelers. And my favorite player with a minimum 7-year-old picture, Eddie Metter of the Rams. So they were not in the Topps set, only in the Kellogg set. The rest of the Kellogg's cards, the other 57 cards, were all also in the corresponding Topps set. Now, here's a few others. Hall of Famer Jim Otto. That happens to be his 1967 Topps picture. Another Hall of Famer, Deacon Jones. Again, Rams last wore that uniform 1963. and we have George Webster, the Oilers. And what's interesting, on the backgrounds of the Kellogg's, they have nothing to do with the photo. That's the what's called the peristyle end, where the Olympic flame is, of the Olympic Coliseum in downtown Los Angeles. It has nothing to do with the Houston Oilers. But they would take the Topps picture and lay it over another usually blurred background, creating the 3D effect. Anyways, the Kellogg set is very colorful. Really like them. I don't like the 3D because the cards curl, but I got mine. They were still in the original mailing envelope from somebody that ordered them from Kellogg's Direct, and they had never been taken out, so they went straight from there into these top loaders, and they've stayed just fine. No cracking on any of them. Everything looks good. Second thing issued, Topps issued independently from the regular set were the Topps Super Football. These big, oversized cards. The backs are the same. Some pictures are the same, some pictures are different. So this is Deacon Jones of the Rams. Here's his Topps card. It's a different photo. The backs are the same except for the card number. There are 35 cards in the Topps Super set. They did baseball like this size in 70 and 71, and these football in 70. And numbers 29 to 35 are supposed to be short printed. Mostly big star players. So that, and they're very thick, as you can see. That's the Topps Super set. Within the card packs, they issued a glossy set. The Topps glossy insert. You saw the Biletnikoff. Here's Hall of Famer Mel Renfro. These are very, very nice. They're quite popular. And they tend to yellow on the back. That's just the nature of the gloss I think they used on the cards. 33 cards. Again, some pictures the same, some not. This one in Daryl LaMonica shows a problem. Some of them you'll find in is the cutting on them was off. And I've seen them cut pretty crazy. But the glossies are inserted in the regular pack, as was a poster set. Now the posters were 24 total, and they are watercolors, and of course now they're really oversized, but now remember we've entered the no logo era. That would be the Bears and the 49ers there for Gale Sayers. There's 24 different posters. Some of them are ridiculous, quite frankly, for anybody who knows football. And again, Topps can't get away from old uniforms. There's the 7-year-old Rams uniform for Roman Gabriel. Of course, the horns on the helmet are gone. That's the Jets depicted there. Some of the teams shown, these teams don't exist. A uniform like that didn't exist. For example, Tom Mack of the Rams. That's the correct uniform for them, but who's this? That's not the Browns. They don't wear a white helmet. The Bengals being the only ones similar. They don't wear a white. They both wear orange helmets, so this is a non-existent team. The old photo again, now old painting of Deacon Jones against the Eagles. One of them has an entirely incorrect depiction. By the way, Dick Butkus poster. Here's another non-existent franchise. I don't know who that is. Trying to get that. Here we go. David Lee, the punter of the Colts, is not a place kicker. This is somebody trying a field goal or extra point against another uniform that doesn't exist. So, yeah. The Cowboys' old uniform, last worn also in 1963 on Larry Wilson of the Cardinals. So, the posters, I had them all up on the wall, as you can tell. They're all torn up. These are my originals. Of course, now the Chargers are the most effective team with no license because they had the lightning bolt on the legs, the shoulders, and the helmet. That is correct that the Chargers had the uniform number on the helmet, but that's all blanked out. That looks like they're playing the Broncos, or it could be the Oilers. See if there's anything again. Bob Lilly here, shown in the old early 60s Cowboys uniform against Green Bay. there's no number 87 playing quarterback. So good luck with what that was. And you get the idea. So there's 24 in that insert set. The main set then, as we'll move on to the main set, consisted of 263 cards. The idea was, when the checklists were designed, and we'll talk about how that was affected, 10 cards per team gives you 260. One extra card for the team that won the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs. They got the number 1 card with Len Dawson, their quarterback. So they would get 11. Everybody else gets 10. And then 2 checklist cards. It fills out 263, except there were trades. So that messed it up. It ended up that 8 teams were affected. And one team had a 1 go and 1 come, so they stayed the same. The checklist cards both show this photo of the, well, what it is, it's the Cardinals and the Giants from New York, but that's early 60s. Cardinals wearing those red pants, and that's an old shot. So those are the checklist cards. So some of the trades that happened up through like January, they have them printed with their old team, but the card is with the new team. So you got like Leroy Caffey with the Packers, but he's now with the Bears. Homer Jones goes to the Browns from the Giants. That's the 3rd straight year Topps used that photo for Homer Jones. Paul Warfield, picture with the Browns, but he was traded like in January. Crazy camera. There we go. And so you have a Browns photo now with the Dolphins. Oh, see, Paul was acquired by the Dolphins from the Browns in a major trade after the 69. So yeah, it was January. Yeah. Bruce Gossett went from the Rams to the 49ers for Kermit Alexander. Kermit Alexander's not in the set, but it's a picture of Gossett with the Rams. Now is where things started to get affected. So Tom Byer was scheduled to be with the Dolphins, but they traded him to the 49ers. Now this is a first series card, and it opens up with Tom was traded to the 49ers by the Dolphins on May 1st, 1970. So they finalized the checklist in April or so, or before then, of the 10 players per team, but now they've had a trade. Now they haven't gone to print yet because here we have it right as the first line. So they changed teams to 49ers. That would give the 49ers 11 players and the Dolphins only 9. As Byer never played for the 49ers. Actually, 1969 was it for him. And but nevertheless, here he is on a card. A lot of times with football, you know, people get released in training camp. They get injured. They can't play anymore. They're done. And so whatever happened with Byer, I couldn't find anything. But so he's dealt on May 1st. And at the end of May, the 49ers now no longer have 11 because they trade Clifton McNeil to the Giants. Now, on the last line there, traded to the Giants May 31st, 1970. This is a second series card. So they were making the corrections up through then. They had already finalized the checklist, but now they've had these 2 alterations. Another one, Dick Westmoreland, Dolphins to Vikings. Westmoreland never played for the Vikings, though I found an article where he was really thrilled to go to them because they were a winning team. He never played for them. I couldn't find if he was released, retired, got injured, what happened, but he never played. 1969 was his last year. Picture, of course, with the Dolphins. He was also traded in May to Minnesota, and thus the Dolphins now have 8 of their original 10. They've traded away 2. Now that gives the Vikings 11 players. Paul Martha goes from the Steelers to the Broncos. There is no mention on the back. So by this time, I'm saying the text on the back may be finished, and they simply corrected the team on the front as he was traded to the Broncos. The same thing with Joe Scarpati. who goes to the Saints from the Eagles. No mention of a trade on the back. So what we can see by this is the first series might have gone to press maybe mid-May. And the second series sometime in June, since they have May 31st trade on there. And the cards released the first series, I believe, into July or August. Second series would have been released, I think, in September with those changes. Now, something that happened with the Cincinnati Bengals, who had come into existence in 1968, 68 Topps, you understand that, well, you know, we don't have any pictures, it's a brand new team, so they're all pictured with their former team. Okay, fine. But 1969, they were still all pictured with their former teams. No Bengals pictures. What's going on? 1970, we finally get them pictured in Bengals uniforms, but the pictures are awful. They all look like they were almost like these team photos where they zero in on one, and of course you lose resolution when you do that. All of them look like this. Royce Berry's probably the best looking card. Or they're looking like they're taken, you know, with a cheapy camera you got at the drugstore for $1. So they're all like that. Why? Only I can figure is because the Bengals came in when the merger licensing stuff started. Was that a problem? Is that, or was it Topps just lazy? I don't know. I've never seen an explanation why there were no Bengals pictures till their third season. There were no decent Bengal pictures until 1972. 1971, again, they went back to showing guys with old uniforms, or the Bengals themselves with Bengals uniforms were pictured in their white uniform, and again, this same type of fuzziness and lack of clarity. I don't know what's going on. So not till their actual fifth season did they have decent pictures. A couple other things with the 70 set. The two Gene Washingtons came in together. These guys were confused by people all the time. Gene Washington of Stanford with the 49ers. Gene Washington of the Vikings out of Michigan State. Both wide receivers. Careers kind of paralleled each other. And this is the first card for both of them. We had a pair of brothers, the Kruger brothers. Charlie and Rolf. Come on. Now Charlie played for, 15, 16 years, the 49ers. Rolf, that's his only card. Charlie's a second series, Rolf's a first series. One thing you may notice, it's subtle, but when you see the cards in person, the second series, the tannish area tends to be slightly lighter than the first series. Also, the second series photos tend to have a fresher, crisper look than the first series do. The saga of Joe Kapp was unbelievable. He demonstrated he hadn't signed a contract with the Vikings. They refused to tender him a contract after he led them to the Super Bowl. He refused to accept other offers, and he sat and waited. So he actually didn't sign. The Patriots signed him. Actually, and the season was already October, I believe, when he signed with the Patriots. And so the cards with the Vikings, but he never played with them after 1969. After the Super Bowl was his last game with them. It was a big headline thing. He signed a huge contract with the Patriots. He had a terrible first year, got hurt, and that was the end. He never played again. As compensation for signing Kapp, the Patriots were forced to send safety John Charles to the Vikings. You can see, obviously, his card was already done. The season had already started. They weren't making any corrections then. That's a first series card. But Charles had been printed, so he went to the Vikings as compensation. We'll take a look at some other interesting stories, some of them not so nice, that are in the 1970 set. You have Falcons quarterback Randy Johnson. He experienced mental issues later in life and was living in a backyard shed in some friend's house. I've never really heard what the problem was. Mike Current from Ohio State, famous, very good tackle with the Broncos. He committed suicide out in the woods in Oregon because he was due in court the next day to face a charge of having relations with an underage female. He didn't face it. He took himself out. Pretty sad story. Some of these you begin to wonder, did they have the effects of the hits on the head that so many players had from this era? I don't think I have to say much about this guy. Everybody should know the saga of this guy. But that's his first card. The 70 Super card shows the same photo. Not a surprise, Topps. But anyways, everybody knows, he's become... the sports is not even important with him anymore. It's just he's part of the culture as a byword for a number of things. Jim Tyrer should be a Hall of Famer. Great offensive tackle, but after he had to quit playing, he came home and the Chiefs told him that, well, we don't have a spot for you right now in any type of job. He went home and shot his wife and shot himself while the kids hid under a bed. I think that's probably one of the main reasons why he's never been elected to the Hall of Fame and maybe never will be. But a guy with a lot of issues. On a happier note, Bob Long's only card, of course they have at least a 2-year-old picture with the Packers, but when he was on Green Bay, Bob Long canvassed his teammates if they wanted to go in on an investment opportunity he had for a pizza place. Nobody took him up on it. But that pizza place, right at its beginnings, with Bob Long as one of the owners, turned out to be Pizza Hut. So he made gazillions. Greg Cook, the great what if, 1969 AFL Rookie of the Year. Really only played 4 games without getting hurt. He got hurt. He was the prototype of the quarterback, of the newer quarterback. Big, strong. Got tackled by Jim Lynch of the Chiefs, and his non-throwing shoulder hit the ground, but his throwing shoulder, it tore the rotator cuff. He played the rest of the year trying to throw with that, and I've had a torn rotator cuff, and I don't know how he did it. But he never really recovered. They had surgery. His arm was never the same. He finally tried. He kept trying to come back. Came back briefly in 1974, said he can't make the throws, and he quit. He was also a very talented artist, but never seemed to really grasp that, and he ended up having troubles with alcohol and things, and was actually living over a kind of an abandoned warehouse towards the end of his life. A very sad story. Greg Cook. Paul Brown, the Bengals owner / coach, said he was the greatest quarterback he ever saw. This guy came to the United States from Norway to be on the ski team for Montana State University. And while doing some running or something during the summer to stay in shape, he was watching the football team, and he saw the kickers kicking. He said, what's wrong with those guys? They can't kick it. He went out and told the coach, I could kick that. And I play soccer in Norway. So Stenerud started hitting 50-yard field goals, and they signed him right away. He ends up making the Hall of Fame in American football, a game he never played before. Just saw it as a college student who was there to go skiing. Took him all the way to the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest scorers and kickers of all time, and that's his first card. And we'll conclude this look at 1970 with a feel-good story, if there ever was one. Tom Dempsey. Clarity on that card was not good, but a guy born with half a foot and no hand. Only one hand. And he wanted to play football. His dad said, well, that's all right, but you got to work hard. And he did. He ended up going to Palomar Junior College, which is just north of San Diego. He played defensive line, and he kicked. And the San Diego Chargers actually took him in and put him on the what used to be called the taxi squad, now is the practice squad. And he never played any game for him. Then they let him go, and the New Orleans Saints signed him, and boom. Suddenly, Dempsey was a first-string NFL kicker, and he came in a game. The Lions were leading the Saints 17-16 with 2 seconds to go, I believe, and then set the record for the longest field goal ever kicked. And there was bedlam in New Orleans. People flooded the field, and Dempsey became an overnight sensation. One of the most interesting things I saw him do was when he was on the Rams later in the mid-70s. They kicked off, and the kick returner had gotten by everybody, and he was flying down the sideline, and Dempsey was the last one. Dempsey ran in a hippity-hop way because he had half a foot, but he reached out with his hand, and he was big. Dempsey was a big guy. He grabbed him, pulled him right off his feet, and body slammed him. And Dempsey, I think he would have loved to play the defensive line if he could have. 6'1", 265 pounds. And this guy, you would tell, should this guy have been a pro football player? The system, so to speak, would label him as handicapped, disabled, something. He said his dad never let him. He said he had to do the other chores his siblings did and everything, and I think it was a great thing for him. And he said, I can do anything. I want to play football. And he did. So that's a look at the 70 sets, what Topps did in 1970. There's my set. There's the Kellogg set. There's the posters. I don't have all the glossies. These are the ones I do have. I think I need 8 or 9 of them. Some of them can get expensive, but generally, they're all available. But as a new era began in American football, this is how it was covered in the hobby. You got these different sets to offer, and for the most part, pretty good. The effects of the no licensing really wasn't shown in this set. All the Chargers have headshots so that you don't have a situation where the lightning bolts have to be painted over like they would do during the 70s later on. They would look like this. But then Topps started using action pictures, and so it has a lot of interest here. You end up with, as I said, those 8 teams affected even more or less than the original plan of 10. It's interesting that Topps, when those trades were made, they didn't switch which players were in the set. They just, made the team name adjustment. So that's it for 1970 football. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. Bye.